In the aftermath of that accident on Sunday, we've got some helpful hints as to how to deal with your kids. Actually, it got a little controversial on my radio show yesterday when I was talking to a representative from Family Services of Rhode Island about, how you talk to your kids after they've seen a tragic thing like that 9-person, fall from the near sky in the Dunkin' Donuts Center. And it got a little controversial because people were saying, oh, don't be such a wussy, da-da-da, kids see worse. Well, we'll talk to a clinician about that this evening. And if you don't like what you hear, you can simply feedback on your state of mind. And I think tonight we've got a couple of folks that don't like the show very much, which is always somewhat entertaining, so stay tuned for that. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you aboard on My State of Mind. I am Dan York. We have lots on our state of mind tonight, so let's hurry up and get down to our rundown. This is kind of brand new. Great work by Tim White on WPRI 12 with the Target 12 investigators, and I've got some thoughts on it. Hey, look, they want to put up the money. I think you probably ought to get behind them, for crying out loud. And you can say a little prayer in City Hall. The Supreme Court weighs in. Next item we have is this awful tragedy that if it happened in America, it wouldn't have been such a only social network piece of news. And 15 years later, the Clintons' worst nightmare. All right, let us break this thing down and get into it. On our first item, yes, Ralph Mollis is in the 38 mix. He is the Secretary of State. And lo and behold, Tim White found a way to bring Mr. Mollis to the table. There's the headline on WPRI.com, and the story kind of speaks for itself, and then I shall have a thought opine, as they say in the business. Tim does great work.
After first defending why he never investigated the lobbying practices of 38 Studios, Secretary of State Ralph Mollis had a change of heart and has launched an investigation based on our findings. Few companies have affected Rhode Island government like 38 Studios, but a Target 12 review of the state's lobbying database shows not a single person ever registered to lobby on behalf of Curt Schilling's video game company. Then there's this. Target 12 obtained this consulting services agreement that reveals Providence attorney Michael Corso, a friend of former House Speaker Gordon Fox, signed a contract with 38 Studios. Dated January 2011, the company promised to pay Corso $300,000 a year to, among many duties, have interactions with government agencies and various public officials.
I want to show you a consulting services agreement.
We showed the document to Secretary of State Ralph Mollis, who polices lobbyists.
That doesn't get any closer to lobbying than the word lobbyist. So, yes, that person should have registered.
Mollis never looked into possible lobbying violations by 38 Studios, but after our interview says he's now launching an investigation.
Sounds to me like you're in new territory.
Absolutely, yes, we are definitely in new territory.
Mollis says they'll review records and State House video to see who testified in an effort to impact legislation and attempt to investigate meetings that happened outside the walls of the State House.
Just by a quick review, I think it's pretty obvious that some individuals may be, and I want to stress may be in for a hearing before something that I put forward.
Keep in mind, Mollis's office does not have subpoena power, which means he can't force people to testify. But he says he may turn to the Attorney General's office if his findings require more digging.
The Attorney General's office. Peter Kilmartin, I believe, is his name, and you'll find him on a milk carton somewhere. He has been completely out of the loop on this 38 Studios thing. He's part of the Old Boy Network. It's a legislator back when this caper was pulled in the House of Representatives. And he has just absolutely pitifully, I've got a phrase for it, but has abdicated his responsibilities. I hear from Tim in the hallway today, and he's reporting on it. So he or you've already seen his report 5-6 o'clock on Channel 12, that the Colonel of the State Police is meeting with the Secretary of State tomorrow to help him set up ways that he could actually get some answers on this investigation. And Ralph Mollis, he has a way, like Dennis the Menace, of coming out smiling and looking good when he has screwed up. We'll see. Next item. Hey, look, seriously. If they're crazy enough, you people in Newport, you better get on the bandwagon here. Here's the headline. Paolino's Newport Grand bid bets on table games. One of his English partners spoke about, well, he more or less called the place a dump.
the slots parlor, which is just a big ugly shed. It's a business that in many respects has passed its prime. It is in danger of ceasing to exist. Then it needs a massive investment, probably in the order of about $40 million.
Yes, that would be $40 million, you know, and they got to buy the place from the Hurley family. Look, we've got all this pressure from Massachusetts. We've got all this economic battle going on between the states. If these guys are nutty enough to make it some kind of Monte Carlo type of facility, you folks in Newport probably ought to say, go ahead, put the table games in, because the purchase agreement is contingent on local voters saying yes to table games come November. Look, it's about a $400,000, $500,000 bonus to the local general fund in Newport. It could be more. I'd hedge your bet and go with these guys, because time's running out on that place, as he so undiplomatically told you. Next item. Pray on at City Hall. Headline here: the Supreme Court, according to the Washington Post, has upheld legislative prayer at council meetings. Yes, this was a 5-4 vote, and interestingly enough, the 5 Supremes who voted to, let's just say, you know, a quick, dear God, you know, bless us as we deliberate whether or not to increase your property taxes or whatever could be happening at your local council meeting, they're all Catholics. Now, the dissenters had 1 Catholic. I don't know if that matters much, but it does give those folks who think that God is being beaten out of every corner of American culture, to feel like they got a little bit of a win. This is all contingent on the idea that you cannot belittle non-Christians. You can't say, dear Lord, thank you for blessing this city council meeting, and scorn on those non-Christians who are here, they shouldn't be here. You can't do that. You can't do that. But you can have a nice benign prayer, and everyone ought to keep their panties not so much in a bundle. Next item. This is just unbelievable. Nowhere in the world, other than perhaps Nigeria and a couple other places in gosh knows where, Africa, would 300 kids get kidnapped and the world wouldn't be coming at it in all sorts of different directions. Where's the UN? Where's the US? This is unreal. We've got some B-roll of these knuckleheads. This is a radical Islam group that has decided that women shouldn't be educated, and they're trying to prove a point, and they're trying to sell these girls to be married at $12 a piece, and I don't know. It's just, you know, this is going to present quite the dilemma, I hope, for the United Nations, not just the United States. You know, I don't know if there's going to be a drone response to this or whatever, but you know what? I'm sure they're proximate to all these little girls. These guys who think they're such, you know, so courageous. It's a very, very difficult political dilemma for the world, and Nigeria ought to really get their game on, because they didn't really explain to everybody what was going on, and now we're stuck with this situation where these poor girls are not to be found. Some have been, but most aren't. And speaking of prayer, say a prayer, because they're going to need it. God bless them. And finally today, she's back. Yes. I had a laugh when I saw this. Monica Lewinsky, A Piece in Vanity Fair. Now, I don't believe her whole piece is actually out yet. We saw some excerpts. She does suggest that she was victimized. Here's one of the quotes that they forwarded. Sure, my boss took advantage of me, but I'll always remain firm on this point. It was a consensual relationship. Any abuse came in the aftermath when I was made a scapegoat. Can you believe that was 15 years ago? The talk radio that used to happen back 15 years ago on this used to horrify me, with young women who would call and say, you know what, if it was me, I'd do the same thing. You know, it's all about the power. And then me, being the prude that I am, would be horrified by all of that, and I would just, I can't believe this. But here's the weird thing about this. You know, Hillary is thinking about running for president. You may have heard the rumor. Between Benghazi and Lewinsky, she may just decide, I don't need this aggravation. So I will read Monica Lewinsky's piece, as I think many others will. It feels like so yesterday, doesn't it? And I doubt it'll tarnish Bill Clinton any further, unless there's some smoking gun, and I doubt there will be. The one thing I think about Monica Lewinsky, though, is she's one of the few people in the world, whose last name can be a verb. Think about that. Do you guys get that? They're way ahead of me. When we come back, serious conversation about what you talk to your kids about when they see something awful, like Sunday. Stay with us. I think a lot of us were saying, what? On Sunday afternoon as the news was coming out from the Dunkin' Donuts Center about what happened. I still can't figure out how anybody hangs by their hair. But these acrobats do so professionally and provide quite the show. Unfortunately, the show went south. A lot of families there. The circus brings a younger demo, so to speak, mommy and daddy bringing the kids, and it ought to be a good old family time until something like this happens, and it could be a little bit of trauma. Here's Sean Daly's, an excerpt from Sean Daly's report from that terrible accident.
Sunday's 11 a.m. performance of the Ringling Brothers Circus here at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence was stopped about 45 minutes into the show when something went horribly wrong. A device used to connect a metal frame with 8 acrobats hanging from it broke. The failure sent all 8 performers crashing about 35 feet to the ground, landing on a 9th performer. There was no net underneath to catch them.
Yeah, and you know, I think Channel 12 may be the only television outlet, and since we're affiliated, the only television outlet ×2 that didn't show you the crash. Did you miss seeing the? Did you see the crash?
I did see the crash. Yeah.
I mean, it's like what?
Yeah.
Kristen is here from. There's no plural on this.
Mm-mm.
This is Family Service of Rhode Island,
Yes.
which is a private nonprofit organization that's designed to do what?
Well, we provide a very wide array of services from early intervention to adult outpatient. We do psychiatry, residential, foster care. So we have a lot of different services.
Okay, and you are a clinical psychologist?
I'm a clinician. I'm not quite a
Clinician.
psychologist, yes.
Master's in clinical psychology.
PhD, you get to call yourself a psychologist.
Are you on your way to your PhD? You
Possibly,
thinking?
yeah, we'll see.
That's a big, big chunk
big
to bite off.
commitment.
But I'm sure that you're really good with the kids and
Thanks,
the families, and
yeah.
that's kind of something you do. All right, so I got an email from you guys, right? So it stimulated me. So I didn't go looking for you guys. I got an email from you folks, and I thought, you know what? That's a good point. The point is that families are sometimes traumatized. Do we just lose the camera? Yes, that's a first. One of our guests just decided to parade through the camera. That's all right. The problem was not in your television. Anyway, focus. I'm kidding.
I'm here.
The idea that families might have been traumatized by
Yes.
what they saw
Yes.
is actually controversial with my radio listeners, some of whom told me, calm down, it's no big deal, what
Yeah.
a bunch of wussies. Talk to me
Yeah.
about this.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think they're being wussy. I think people respond very differently. It's kind of a spectrum. So one person who's seen that and another person who's seen it can react and exhibit different symptoms. So if we're being proactive and getting the supports out there and encouraging them to be mindful and aware of potential symptoms, I think is actually building really strong and resilient kids.
Look, we all have snapshots in our head of things that happen in our life. Some are terrific, some are not so terrific. Some traumatize us, some we remember as bad memories, but we're able to cope. But you don't really know what little ones are dealing with when they see a crash and boom. Now look, a lot of people say, I don't know how many kids actually experience any trauma here. You don't, we don't. But if it's one, we might be helping. And actually, it's not only about the dunk, it's about anything that could shake them up.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
What are you supposed to do with your little ones when you deal with something like this? You're supposed to bring it up? You're supposed to, what do you do?
There are some really nice ways to help the kids and the families get through something scary and potentially traumatic. We do recommend to limit the exposure, especially to news that is kind of replaying it. We want the parents to turn that off. Be aware of when the parents are talking about it. If you're talking to a friend or a family member, just be aware if the little guy is listening. So we suggest just limiting their exposure. If there's a routine after school, get them right back in it. Don't shift everything because something scary happened. And be there to support them. Give them the space to talk about it if they so choose. And kind of depending on their age, if they're old enough, I would also suggest validating and saying it's normal to have nightmares, or it's normal to be constantly thinking about it, and you're not crazy or you're not weak. This is something, this is a very typical reaction.
Okay, so a child that was there, needs to be dealt with probably differently than a child who may have seen it on television or in the news reports? I don't think most of the kids in the news reports, I mean, they see so much crap on television that probably didn't get much from this, but if you were there, there are different things you got to think about.
Yeah, and I think I would just be a little bit cautious of that, because seeing it on the news or hearing about it at school could be upsetting to kids. So I think we should be paying attention to all the kids, because kids at school are talking about it, maybe misinforming others. So I would be offering support and encouraging this to everyone.
Yeah, probably 23rd graders in elementary school who say they were there and they weren't even there.
Yeah, or now it's kind of different, or it's gotten exaggerated. So I would be offering support and these tips to all the kids, not just the ones that were in the second row.
Right. We've had some programs on mental illness, where we're trying to just create parity between mental illness and physical illness. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And forget just what happened at the dunk. There's a lot of nasty stuff that goes on in the world, and how do you deal with that as a mom or a dad? Stay with us. We're talking during the break with Kristen about some of the things you got to think about as a parent, but not just as a parent. Anybody. You were talking about you were in a car accident at one point, and it shook you up for quite some time.
This is real stuff. Yeah, it happens.
So whatever happened at the dunk, whether you were there, and of course there's such a small percentage of you that might have been there on that particular day, or watched the coverage of it. And some of it was kind of irresponsible. I don't know why media think that they just want to see 9 acrobats hit splat on the floor.
Yes.
I mean, geez, how many times you want to see that before you think to yourselves, what's news and what's
Yeah.
not? But that's a whole nother conversation.
That is another conversation.
Right? But these kinds of reactions can come immediately, but they also can come post-game.
Yes.
So you might have a kid that goes, Mom, I'm fine. I was fine. And 6 months later, all of a sudden, they're acting out, right? So
just
what?
Just parents, they need to be aware of that. It could happen now. You might be seeing symptoms now, and you might see them in a few months. So I think it's really important for parents to be vigilant in monitoring their children and making sure they're well.
Listen, 9/11 was a horror show for America, for the world, right? My little one was little circus-going age at the time that we had the attacks. And I'm not talking out of school here because she's grown out of it at 19, but I will tell you that she didn't want to go to a city.
Yeah, I don't.
She didn't want to go into Providence because she saw, we try to limit what she saw, but I don't know where else she was seeing airplanes go into buildings. As a mom and a dad, how do you cover it all?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't.
Well, you can't, and we wouldn't expect you to. That's an impossibility to completely protect your children from everything that is unsafe or a little bit scary. But parents can provide a safe, supportive environment in the walls of their home and kind of extend through the community or extended family, and that is really going to be important.
It's just a question of how.
How?
Yeah, I mean, just because you're in your home doesn't mean you're providing a safe environment for their psychological welfare, right? So you got to work it. You can't just trust
yeah,
it
I mean, it
because
doesn't.
you're in the house.
Yeah, parents have to
everything's
be
gonna okay.
working at it and supporting their children. It's important, and good parents make good children.
Yeah, I'm sure that gets through to most people. But you know what? If you got a knee injury, that's one thing. If you have just a cut on your shin, mom says, dad will say, shake it off.
Yeah.
But this kind of stuff, you can't say shake it off. You got to make sure that there's something,
right.
if there is something to shake, you don't say shake it off.
Right. And it can be likened to a more physical or traditional injury or illness that you would get medical attention and treatment for a broken leg. So what makes this any different?
And we got to be aware of this mental illness thing. Not that this is a mental illness issue. This is a trauma. This is a psychological trauma potential issue.
Potentially, yes.
It needs to be treated as much as any other physical trauma.
Sure.
We're getting to that time,
Sure.
right? Since you went into school and now that you've been acting as a professional, are you seeing a little bit of recognition in the world that this stuff you don't have to be ashamed of?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am seeing a shift in philosophies, but there is still a lot of progress to go. Still a lot of kind of negative connotations to discourage and before we can promote mental well-being and mental health instead of mental illness.
All right, so if you need some consultation on this, I mean, we have the website. I think we put it up a couple times.
Yeah.
FamilyServiceRI.org. You're a welcoming organization.
Yes.
To handle this, and what else you're working on there? Everything.
Everything, yeah.
has
So
to do with how
I'm in
people
the
think and
Children's
feel.
Treatment and Recovery Center specifically, so I would work directly with this type of population, but we have tremendous amount of services.
All right. Bottom line, parents, do not ignore things like this. Check in with them.
Absolutely.
All right.
Good advice.
And most of the time, the kids are going to be just fine.
Resiliency, kids are resilient, and we need to foster that. So check in with your children, support them, and do what you can.
Thanks.
Call us if you need help.
FamilyServiceRI.org. Your state of mind when we come back. Stay with us. Oh, welcome back. There's a first for everything. You know when that guy walked around? That was kind of funny. We're having a laugh over that. But you know what? That's our state of mind. You know, the show's lie on tape, sort of. This is how you get in touch with us. And I'm sure some of you are going to quarrel with the idea that we ought to pay attention to our kids when they're seeing something traumatic. Well, go ahead if you want to, but I think it's important. 228-1886 is the voicemail number. stateofmind@myritv.com is the email, and you can tweet and Facebook post, as you see on the screen. We've got a couple of quick voicemails. Here's one on Gordon Fox, the Speaker of the House.
I'm a little still upset over this Gordon Fox thing because he's been laying low, no charges against him, nothing's been happening or nothing, so he was welcomed back with cheers and applause and everything and took a seat in the back there and stuff. So I'm kind of sick of them dragging their feet and not telling the taxpayers.
Yeah, you know what? The feds don't tell you anything until they want to. Be patient. And this was very funny. We had the astronomy guys here Friday. This guy didn't like it at all.
I watch Danny every night. Tonight's Friday, and that was the worst show I've ever seen with those two old guys there. They're moon. Not only that, if he's sick, he shouldn't go on. If he can't talk and he's drinking water, he's got to up the ante with that show. Otherwise, I'm certainly gonna stop watching it and get some more interesting people on there. That was garbage. That show. Bye.
Thanks, Bob. By the way, lots of people showed up the astronomy green. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.